The restaurant was loud in the way most busy places are loud. Not angry loud, not messy loud, just full of life. Forks touched plates, chairs scraped the floor, and people talked over one another without even noticing. Laughter came in short bursts from different corners, sometimes real, sometimes forced, but always present. It was the kind of sound that made the walls feel warm. It was a weekday evening, not special in any way. People had come after work, tired and hungry, looking for comfort more than excitement. Some were dressed in office clothes, others in casual wear. A few families sat close together, while couples leaned across tables, talking softly. The air smelled of food that had been cooked the same way hundreds of times before. Among all of this moved the waitress. She didn't stand out. That was something she had learned early on. Standing out often brought questions, and questions led to attention, and attention was not always kind. So she moved carefully, smoothly, like part of the furniture. She smiled when needed, nodded when spoken to, and kept her voice calm and short. Most people barely looked at her face for more than a second. She had worked here long enough to know the rhythm of the place. She knew which table liked extra napkins, which customer always asked for refills late, and which group laughed the loudest after their second drink. She knew how to carry 3 plates at once without spilling and how to walk fast without looking rushed. It was not a dream job, but it paid the bills, and right now that was enough. The noise never really stopped. Even when one group finished laughing, another would begin. Sometimes it came from jokes, sometimes from stories, sometimes from nothing at all. People laughed because they were with friends, because they were tired, or because silence felt uncomfortable. No one noticed how that noise slowly became a cover, hiding everything else. The waitress passed by a table where a group of young people were teasing each other. One of them said something loud, and the rest burst out laughing. She smiled politely, even though she hadn't heard the joke clearly. It didn't matter. Smiling was part of the job. She placed their drinks down carefully, making sure the glasses didn't touch too hard. At another table, an older couple sat quietly, barely speaking. They watched the room more than they watched each other. The waitress paused for a moment there, asking if everything was okay. The woman nodded, the man smiled softly, and that was all. Some people didn't need much. Others needed more than anyone could give. In the corner of the restaurant, the sound seemed louder, bouncing off the walls. The waitress avoided staying there too long. That corner made her feel smaller, like the noise could swallow her whole. She preferred moving, staying busy, giving her hands something to do. She had learned that being busy kept thoughts away. Thoughts about what she had wanted once. Thoughts about what she had left behind. Thoughts about things she never talked about, not even to people close to her. The past felt safer when it stayed quiet. A few co-workers moved around her, calling out orders, joking among themselves. They had their own lives, their own worries. To them, she was just another person working the shift. Reliable, quiet, easy to work with. No one expected anything more. At one point, a plate slipped slightly as she set it down, making a small clink. A customer laughed and said something light-hearted about her almost dropping it. She laughed too, softly, even though her hands had not shaken at all. Mistakes were noticed. Skill was ignored. The evening went on like that. Orders taken. Food delivered. Tables cleared. Time moved forward without asking permission. The noise stayed steady, like a wave that never fully broke. She paused near the counter for a moment, waiting for the next order. Her eyes drifted across the room, not focusing on anyone in particular. She noticed the way people leaned into laughter, how their faces relaxed when they felt heard. She noticed how easily joy appeared when people felt safe. There was a time when she had felt that way too. A time when sound had meant something different. When it wasn't just background noise, but purpose. But that time felt far away now, like a place seen through fog. Someone called her from across the room, asking for the check. She responded quickly, her voice calm and clear. No one could hear anything special in it. It was just a voice doing a job. As she walked back toward the counter, a group near the center table began laughing again, louder than before. One of them clapped, another leaned back in their chair. felt like the whole room joined in, even those who didn't know why. The waitress slowed her steps for just a second. The sound hit her differently this time. Not in a painful way, but in a way that stirred something deep and quiet inside her. She took a breath and continued walking. She didn't know it yet, but this ordinary night was already changing shape. The laughter that filled the room, the noise everyone took for granted, was closer to its end than anyone realized. Soon, the sound would fade, and something else would take its place. For now, though, everything looked the same. The restaurant buzzed with life. People laughed without thinking. And the waitress kept moving, unnoticed, carrying more than just plates through a room that had no idea what was about to happen. The night continued to move forward, slow but steady, like it always did. Plates were cleared, new orders were taken, and the sound of laughter never fully left the room. It rose and fell, sometimes loud, sometimes soft, but always there. To most people, it was just another evening they would forget by morning. The waitress moved between tables, her steps measured, her face calm. Inside, though, something felt different. Not heavy, not sharp, just a quiet feeling that wouldn't go away. She brushed it off at first, telling herself it was nothing. Long shifts often made the mind play tricks. Near the center of the room, a group had gathered more attention than the others. They were clearly enjoying themselves, joking loudly and teasing one another. A few people nearby glanced over now and then, smiling or shaking their heads. The energy around that table was playful and careless. As the waitress approached them to take another order, one of them made a comment about the music playing softly in the background. It was barely noticeable, just a low sound meant to fill space. Someone joked that it was boring, that they could do better themselves. Laughter followed, light and teasing. The waitress smiled politely, as she always did. She wrote down their order, listening without really listening. Comments like that were common. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone felt comfortable sharing it. Then someone turned to her and said something meant as a joke. It wasn't cruel, just careless. A simple question about whether she could sing any better than the music playing. The table laughed again, not expecting an answer. It was the kind of question asked only to keep the moment going. She paused, pen hovering over her notepad. For a brief second, the noise around her faded. She felt that quiet feeling rise again, stronger this time. Her first instinct was to laugh it off, to shake her head and move on. That was the safe choice, the expected choice. But something held her there. She looked at the table, then at the rest of the room. No one was paying close attention. They were still laughing, still talking. To them, she was just part of the service, a background figure. That thought settled in her chest, warm and heavy at the same time. She gave a small smile and said very little in response. Nothing that stood out. Nothing that invited more attention. She finished taking the order and stepped away. As she walked toward the counter, her hands felt steady, but her heart beat faster than usual. The question lingered in her mind, repeating itself. Not the words, but the meaning behind them. Could she do better? She told herself it didn't matter. This wasn't the place. This wasn't the time. She had learned long ago to keep certain parts of herself hidden. Life had taught her that not everyone was ready to see them, and not everyone would understand. Behind the counter, a coworker asked her something about an order. She answered quickly, pushing the thoughts aside. Work came first. It always did. The background music continued, soft and dull. It filled the space but didn't demand attention. People talked over it easily. Laughter covered it completely. She picked up a tray and returned to the dining area, weaving through tables with practiced ease. As she placed drinks down, she noticed a few people still smiling from the earlier joke. It hadn't meant much to them. Just another moment of noise in a noisy room. But for her, it had opened a door she kept closed for a reason. She remembered other rooms long ago. Different walls, different faces. Rooms where silence had meaning, where people listened instead of laughed. Those memories came quietly, without warning. She hadn't invited them, but they stayed anyway. A chair scraped the floor nearby, pulling her back to the present. Someone asked for extra sauce. Someone else waved for the check. The room demanded her attention again, and she gave it. Still, the feeling didn't leave. At one table, a customer asked if everything was okay. The waitress nodded, surprised by the question. She hadn't realized her expression had changed. She forced a smile, one that felt slightly heavier than before. "I'm fine," she said, and it was true in a way. She wasn't upset. She wasn't angry. She was just awake in a way she hadn't been for a long time. The group at the center table began clapping suddenly, reacting to something said among themselves. The sound cut through the room, sharp and sudden. A few people looked over. The noise grew again. The waitress stood near the edge of the room, tray in hand, watching for a brief moment. The laughter that once felt distant now felt close, almost personal. It wasn't mocking. It wasn't kind either. It was simply unaware. She took a slow breath. In that breath, she felt a decision forming. Not a full plan, not a clear action, just a small shift inside her, like something turning toward the light after years in the dark. She didn't move yet. She didn't say anything. The room continued as it always had. But something had changed, even if no one else could see it. Soon there would be a moment. Not dramatic, not planned, just a moment where choice would matter. For now, the waitress continued her work, carrying plates and quiet thoughts through a room full of laughter, standing on the edge of a silence that was slowly, quietly, making its way toward the center. The moment arrived without warning. It did not come with a spotlight or a signal. It slipped in quietly, between the clatter of dishes and another wave of laughter, almost unnoticed at first. The background music suddenly stopped. It wasn't dramatic. No loud pop, no screech. Just silence where sound had been. For a second, no one reacted. People kept talking, kept laughing, not realizing something was missing. Then the room felt strange, like a breath held too long. A few heads turned toward the speakers. Someone joked about the system breaking. Laughter followed again, quick and careless. The waitress stood near the counter, a tray resting against her hip. She noticed the silence immediately. Her body reacted before her mind did. Her shoulders stiffened slightly, and her fingers tightened around the edge of the tray. This was the moment. She didn't know how she knew. She just did. Someone from the center table called out, half joking, saying now it was really quiet. Another voice added something playful, suggesting someone should do something to fill the space. A few people laughed again, louder this time, as if trying to chase the silence away. The waitress took a slow step forward, then stopped. Her heart was beating hard now, not fast enough to scare her, but strong enough to remind her she was alive. She thought of all the times she had stayed quiet, all the times she had chosen safe over true, all the moments she had let pass because it felt easier to disappear. This silence felt different, felt like an open door. She set the tray down gently on the counter. The soft sound it made seemed louder than it should have. A coworker glanced at her, confused, but said nothing. She took another step forward. At first, no one noticed. The room was still busy with its own noise. But then someone saw her standing there, not moving, not working. A few eyes followed. She felt exposed, standing in the open space between tables. Her instinct screamed at her to stop, to turn back, to laugh it off. She almost did. Instead, she closed her eyes for a brief second and took a breath. When she opened them, the room felt closer, quieter. She didn't speak. She didn't announce herself. She simply began. The sound came out clear and steady. Not loud, not soft. Just right. It filled the space the music had left behind, sliding into the silence like it belonged there. At the nearest table, someone stopped mid-sentence. Another person frowned slightly, trying to understand what they were hearing. The waitress stood still as she continued. Her voice did not shake. Carried something deeper than sound alone. Carried time, practice, feeling. The laughter near the center table faded first. One person laughed awkwardly, then stopped. Another leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes fixed. The room changed shape. Conversations fell apart, unfinished. Chairs stopped moving. Forks paused halfway to mouths. One by one, people realized something was happening, something they hadn't expected. The waitress kept going. She did not look around. She did not search for reactions. She focused on the space in front of her, on the sound leaving her chest and finding its way into the room. For the first time in a long while, she was not serving. She was giving. The silence grew thick and full. It wasn't empty anymore. It held everyone inside it. A person near the back wiped their eyes without realizing it. Another pressed their lips together, holding their breath. Phones that had been out were slowly lowered. The waitress felt something lift inside her. A weight she had carried for years loosened its grip. Each note felt like a step forward, away from the quiet fear that had followed her for so long. She remembered why she had loved this once, why she had worked so hard, why she had believed, for a short time, that it could be enough. Her voice moved through the room with ease, rising and falling naturally. There was no show, no performance tricks, just honesty. The people listening felt it, even those who didn't understand why. When she reached the final sound, she let it fade slowly, not rushing the end. She stood still as the silence returned, different now than before. No one spoke. The room held its breath together, as if afraid that any sound might break what had just happened. Then, somewhere near the center table, someone clapped. It was a single clap, loud in the quiet. Another followed, then another. The sound spread, not wild, not shouting, but steady and sincere. People stood without thinking. Some smiled through tears. Others simply shook their heads in disbelief. The waitress opened her eyes fully now. She looked around, really looked, and saw faces changed by something they hadn't known they needed. She felt her hands shake at last, but she didn't mind. The fear had passed. For a moment, she forgot she was a waitress, forgot the noise, forgot the years of silence. In that moment, she was exactly who she had always been meant to be. The laughter that once filled the room was gone. In its place stood stillness, deep and respectful, holding the echo of something real. And no one who witnessed it would ever hear silence the same way again. The applause slowly settled, like waves pulling back after reaching the shore. People lowered their hands, not because they wanted to stop, but because the moment itself felt complete. The room stayed quiet, not awkward, not empty, just calm in a way it had not been before. The waitress stood where she was, breathing in and out, letting the sound fade from her body. Her chest felt light, almost unfamiliar. For a few seconds, she did not know what to do next. She had never planned beyond that moment. Someone near the front spoke softly, not wanting to break the feeling. Another nodded, as if words were not enough. Faces around the room held different emotions, but they all shared the same attention. No one was rushing back to their conversations. No one was laughing. A coworker approached her carefully, eyes wide, voice low. They asked if she was okay. She nodded, still finding her balance. The answer felt bigger than a simple yes. A customer from the center table stood up. Not loudly, not dramatically. They thanked her. Just that. Two simple words spoken with honesty. Others followed, offering quiet praise, gentle smiles, respectful nods. It did not feel like attention. Felt like recognition. She stepped back toward the counter, unsure if she should return to work or stand still a little longer. Her legs felt steady now, but her hands still trembled. She placed them together, grounding herself in the feel of her own skin. The restaurant slowly returned to motion, but not to noise. People spoke in softer voices. Laughter, when it came, was gentle and brief. Something had shifted, and everyone could feel it. She picked up her tray again. Work did not disappear just because something special had happened. Plates still needed to be cleared. Checks still needed to be paid. Life moved forward. But it moved differently now. As she walked between tables, people looked at her face this time. Really looked. Not as someone passing by, but as someone they wanted to remember. A few asked quiet questions, careful not to push. She answered simply, without details. This moment did not need explaining. At one table, someone said they had never heard anything like that before. At another, someone admitted it reminded them of a time they thought they had lost. She listened, nodded, thanked them. She did not try to take more from the moment than it offered. In the kitchen area, the noise was lower than usual. Even there, the mood had changed. A few co-workers smiled when she passed. One shook their head slowly, still in disbelief. No teasing, no jokes, just respect. She finished her tasks, one by one, moving with a calm she had not felt in years. The heavy weight that used to sit on her shoulders was gone, replaced by something softer. Not confidence exactly, more like peace. A manager pulled her aside briefly, voice quiet, careful. They asked where she had learned to do that. She answered honestly, without story, without drama. The manager nodded, said nothing more, and let her return to work. Near the end of the night, the restaurant began to empty. Chairs were stacked, tables wiped down. The sound of the city outside crept back in through the doors. She stood for a moment near the entrance, watching people leave. Some glanced back at her before stepping out, as if they wanted to carry the moment with them. She hoped they would. When the doors finally closed and the lights dimmed, she felt the tiredness settle in. Not the heavy kind that drags you down, but the honest kind that comes after something real. She gathered her things slowly, giving herself time. No one rushed her. No one needed to. Outside, the night air was cool. The street was quieter than the restaurant had been earlier. She stood there for a moment, listening to the sound of her own breath, the distant hum of traffic. She thought about how close she had come to staying silent, how easily the moment could have passed. The idea made her chest tighten, not with fear, but with gratitude. She did not know what would come next. No promises had been made, no plans formed, but something inside her had woken up, and she knew it would not go back to sleep. As she walked away, the noise of the day faded behind her. The stillness stayed. It followed her home, gentle and steady, reminding her that sometimes, all it takes is one moment of courage to change the way the world listens. And even if nothing else ever came from it, that night would remain hers, a quiet truth carried forward, strong enough to last. The restaurant had emptied, leaving only the faint smell of food and the soft echo of the night. The lights were dimmed low, and the chairs were stacked neatly. It was a quiet place now, nothing like the busy, laughing room it had been hours ago. The waitress walked slowly through the space, letting her hands glide along the edge of each table. She had spent so many nights like this, finishing her shift, feeling unseen. But tonight was different. Tonight had changed something she couldn't quite name yet. Her steps were careful, measured, but they didn't carry the usual weight of exhaustion. Instead, there was a quiet pride in them, a recognition that she had done something meaningful, even if the world outside never knew. The memory of the moment, the silence that had taken over, the way people had stopped to listen, lingered in her mind like a gentle echo. She thought about the customers who had witnessed her, the ones who had smiled, who had nodded, who had given a quiet applause. She thought about the few who had tears in their eyes, their hearts touched by something they hadn't expected. And she thought about herself, standing in the middle of the room, not performing for anyone, but sharing a piece of herself that had been hidden for far too long. It was not fame. It was not applause outside the walls of the restaurant. It was something smaller, quieter, and yet more powerful. It was recognition, understanding, and the feeling of being seen in a world where most people were invisible. As she gathered her things to leave, she paused near the counter. A coworker lingered, still amazed by what had happened. They didn't speak much. Words weren't necessary. Sometimes silence said more than anything could. Outside, the city hummed softly. The streetlights cast long shadows, and the night was calm. She stepped into it, breathing deeply, feeling the cool air fill her lungs. Each step she took felt lighter than the last, as if the weight of countless silent years had been lifted, if only for a moment. She thought about how easily life could have gone back to normal, with laughter filling the room and her remaining unseen. But she also realized that some moments, once experienced, could never truly be undone. Some truths, once revealed, could not be hidden again. The memory of the performance stayed with her as she walked. She remembered the sound, the way the room had listened, the stillness that had followed. It was not something she could plan or control, and yet it had been entirely hers. That realization brought a smile to her face. She reached the corner of the street near her home and stopped. The lights from nearby windows painted warm rectangles on the pavement. For a moment, she simply stood there, letting the quiet of the night sink in. The city around her felt different, softer somehow, as if it had noticed the shift within her. She thought about tomorrow, about returning to the restaurant and seeing the same tables, the same chairs, the same routines. But tonight had taught her something important. It taught her that even in the most ordinary places, extraordinary things could happen. And it taught her that she had a choice, to remain hidden or to allow herself to be seen. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't know if anyone would remember the night, if anyone would care. But she did know that she would remember it. That alone was enough. As she turned to enter her building, she felt a sense of quiet determination. The courage she had found tonight was not loud or showy. It didn't need to be. It was steady, persistent, and entirely her own. She could carry it forward, into whatever came next, without needing anyone's permission. Inside her apartment, she placed her bag down and sat quietly by the window. The city lights twinkled in the distance, and for the first time in a long time, she felt connected to something larger than herself. The night had been ordinary in many ways, but it had also been extraordinary, and she was changed because of it. She closed her eyes and let herself rest, knowing that life would continue, and that moments of courage and beauty could happen anywhere, even in a busy restaurant filled with laughter that could turn to stillness in a single breath. And in that stillness, she found a new sense of peace, carrying forward a quiet strength that would never fade, a truth she would hold close, and a memory of a night when something hidden became brilliantly visible, even if only for a moment.